to see U.S. boots on the ground at this point?
I think that the best way to articulate this is to say that, and that's something that we have said, that the boots on the ground in Iran are the Iranian people themselves. We don't need to have foreign troops doing the job for us. But in order for people to be emboldened and have a fair fighting chance, unlike what happened in January 8th and 9th when they were massacred to the tune of over 40,000 people in less than 48 hours, how could you expect the people to be the elements on the ground if they don't get the appropriate protection or cover? We can only call to this action by people being on the streets again when they have that level of an equal fighting chance, not while the regime can deploy their thugs to murder people on the streets. That's why we needed to have the air campaign. That's why we needed to have the aerial protection. And I think that's where you can generate the element on the grounds that will not require the use of foreign troops doing that job. And in order to transfer to that, however, you have to have a clear message. You have to have a clear strategy of aiming for putting an end to this regime, allowing for people to revolt, allowing for elements within the military and security forces to defect and join with the people. All of that has to be coordinated as a coherent strategy. You cannot send mixed signals. On the one hand, say people need to rise, and at the same time say, wait, we are negotiating. It's confusing the hell out of everyone. And I think this is the kind of issue that has been a little bit a concern for all of us watching and observing how the situation is unfolding.
It's impossible to know the exact death toll right now, but thousands of Iranian citizens, including children, have been killed as a result of this war. Do you think a return to a bombing campaign is worth the price on the ground?
Look, hitting the regime where it hurts is the infrastructure that the regime is using against its own citizenry. The targeting that we saw was clearly an element that aimed at neutralizing elements that the regime would use as elements of coercion or repression of its own citizenry. Obviously targeting the intelligence apparatus of the state, the IRGC or anything attached to that. This is exactly what the people were, in fact, happy to see happen. People are smart enough to know the difference between being attacked as a nation as opposed to the regime being attacked. And clearly that campaign was not an attack against the nation, it was an attack against the regime.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. I'm thrilled to be joined by the exiled Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi for both the Security Summit and a live taping of my podcast, The Conversation. I want to talk about the latest in the war, but before we get to that, tens of thousands of Iranians have been killed, arrested, tortured by the Iranian regime since those massive protests broke out late last year. The regime has executed at least 190 people so far this year, including a grad student in Tehran just this week. So I want to start with, what is your message to the Iranian people right now?
First of all, good morning, everyone. I'm delighted to be here, and thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. I'm so glad you asked me the question, because just last month when I was touring many countries in Europe and had several press conferences, not a single reporter even brought up the issue of what's happening in Iran today, of so many people that were killed, and the fact that the real war that has been going on is a war that the regime started against our own people 47 years ago, that has never stopped. There hasn't been a ceasefire on the people of Iran. Executions are continuing almost on a daily basis. As of the last 2 weeks, we had over 28 confirmed executions that occurred in Iran. And this is really why this struggle is so important and vital to us. This is not just about the national security of the United States or stability in the world. It's about the liberation of a nation that, unlike this regime that has been chanting death to America from its inception, we are a nation that, once free, would like to be the best partners and allies to the regional partners that we have in the Arab countries and, of course, Israel, but also the United States. What's at stake here is a complete changing of the circumstances, and which is why this conflict, as we see it, has to be seen through. And this is what is the biggest expectation of my fellow compatriots, that despite the crackdown, despite the fact that now more than 70 days of total internet blackout, where they have no means to communicate with the outside world, they are still resilient, but they are hoping that all this sacrifice has not been in vain, and that finally they'll be able to be liberated as a result of this regime being brought down to its knees.
To that point.